Hello and welcome everyone back to another episode of
Not Fighting.
I'm Tyler Bishop and this is
Jena Bishop.
Same last name, no relation. I thought that was going to get a reaction. I didn't.
I don't understand.
But
Okay.
yeah, so we're back with another episode of the podcast. And the last episode was really fun. And when we finished, we kind of said like we could probably talk about this subject for like 2.5 hours, which you and I personally offline have had conversations about
Multiple hours.
Yeah, the past week, ongoing.
I wouldn't say it was a fun podcast.
No, it was not. No, and I think that was one of the things we talked about before this, which was it's not something we want to always just be hammering home. It's like these like really intense, serious topics because it's just not sort of like.
But it's something that needs to be talked about. We can't just like ignore it. I definitely can't ignore it. There's still a lot going on, and I think, you know, if you're following along with any of it, especially like Missy and Mo on their Instagram are coming out with like a lot of different new, stories, just sharing so that everybody has the right information. So
which you're referring to Missy, who's one of the organizers from Fight to Win, and then Mo Jassim, who's also the organizer for ADCC. Yes,
and they are kind of doing a little scorched earth thing, which is necessary and needed to expose all of these sexual predators that are in the community that have been hiding or been brushed under the rug. And props to them for continuing to bring these things to the light. And I think that it's something that's not fun to talk about. It's not comfortable to talk about, but it needs to be out there because, enough is enough. Like, we're over it. And I hope that this movement continues so that the right people, women feel empowered to speak out about their own experiences and aren't afraid, and that this like culture of black belt worship kind of like comes to an end where you realize that everybody's just a normal person and some of those people aren't great. Doesn't matter what color belt you wear, or doesn't make you a good person, doesn't make you a bad person, but it doesn't entitle you to anything.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is it puts you in position a lot of times as a black belt to be in a position of leadership, or like whether that's like something you wanted or not. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of like organizational like association heads and leaders and stuff like that are finding out now, where it's like, yeah, you might not have done anything wrong, but realize like you're now responsible as a leader for these people that you have that fly under your flag, or like, run an academy or school or something like that. These people put your name on the door. So if there's something that they're associated with that's negative, realize like you can't just kind of be an observer in this situation. You have to be a leader. And, I think being a leader always sounds a lot more appealing and a lot sexier than it actually is. Yeah. Like I tell this people all the time where it's like, if you have employees that work for you, they don't work for you, you work for them. And the reason I say that is because your responsibility is to put them in position to succeed, and to also make sure that if there's anybody on your team that's incapable or incompatible, that you're the one that's supposed to do something about that. Yep. And being a good leader means like being the person that's on top of that. Yeah.
And you can't just pretend you didn't know about it, or pretend and then come out with a statement like 3 years later. There's a lot of people doing that right now, are coming out with multiple statements, and it's just like, what does that even mean? You knew this was happening. You knew that this did, and it's like, you still allow these people to teach and rep your flag and rep your brand and do these different things, and you still like paid them and gave them an opportunity, when that's the thing that's like, I don't care like you made a mistake, like, and now it's getting exposed. So this like CYA statements are like just like irritating to me. Like it's comical. Like
it's like your friend that's like not a lawyer but thinks he's a lawyer. Like
yeah, like
helps
told
you write it
right. And it's like no, like here's the thing, like just own it. Like you made a mistake. Like you allowed this to happen, and it was against your better judgment. But like do better. Like don't give me this like. I don't want to just, lip service. Like, do better. Kick these people out. They shouldn't be allowed. Do better. I don't need a statement. I don't need anything official from you. Like, I just need you to be a better person.
Yeah, the thing is like, the do better part, it's like, yeah, I get that. But the thing is like, what do you actually do if you're that person? And I think about this a lot where it's like, honesty, truth, the light of day is always like the best policy. It's like I run everything at the company that I work for this way. Yeah. I'm a big believer that it's like you know, they always say like you can't go broke making a profit or whatever. I feel like you basically can't go wrong like leaning into the truth. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget this, but I have a soft spot for like leaders because I've found myself in many instances in my life being a leader when I did not intend to or did not necessarily want to be. Yeah. And, you know, I remember I had an employee and it was his birthday and he came in late. Irregardless, but somebody had got him, one of the gifts was they got him a giant 40 ounce of Smirnoff Ice. They iced him. For those that are not initiated, being iced means
that if somebody surprises you and you open whatever it is, a gift or a door, and there's a Smirnoff Ice, you just have to chug it.
Take a knee and chug it.
Take a knee and chug it.
And so this is in our office, and so they did
in the morning.
Yeah, it was 11:30 in the morning on like a Wednesday. So this isn't Friday or something, and so he immediately takes a knee and he just starts chugging this like 40 ounce Smirnoff Ice. And I'm just kind of like, I'm watching it happen. And I'm just like, as he's like drinking it and everybody's like laughing and like cheering, I'm like, somebody should do something about this. I'm not sure this is okay. And I'm like, I'm somebody. I'm the somebody that should do something about this. I'm in charge. This is my responsibility. And then immediately I went from this is my responsibility to this is my fault. Like, how did I let this happen? But I was just like watching it happen, you know? And so like after that, I kind of like pulled a couple different people aside and I was like, hey, yeah, it's funny. Like I hate this, but like we can't just like ice people here.
Yeah, like we can't just be like pounding Smirnoff Ice like in the middle of the workplace. Like.
Yeah, it's like, and you know, like I kind of come at it from in that respect where it's like you guys are gonna get me killed. Like there's no way we can do this, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing when you're a leader of an jiu-jitsu association where it's like you might not even ask for this. You might have been a successful jiu-jitsu competitor or something like that, but like now all of a sudden like this thing is built up around you, mm-hmm. and like even if something happens and you realize like you handled it poorly because you weren't prepared, like then just be honest and be like, I wasn't prepared for this, you know?
Yeah, just own it. It's so much easier to forgive people. Like, and for me, it's so much easier to forgive people's like shortcomings when they're like own it and they're honest about it. It's like I can forgive people who like constantly make mistakes. Not constantly. It irritates me when it's constant and you don't
especially
make changes.
If it's me.
Yeah. I'm actually thinking about my sisters. Sorry, guys. But no, but it's like when there's like two different people in my life that I'm like, one of them is always trying to hide and make excuses for their mistakes that they've made. And one of them just like, yeah, I messed up, like whatever, like I did it. Maybe sometimes they're sorry, maybe sometimes they're not. But I'm like, I can deal with that easier and I can forgive you or move on or just whatever easier than somebody that hides it, you know?
Yeah.
Or tries to cover it up.
Well, you and I were talking about this right before the podcast started because we were talking about just different people that we've sort of like just distanced ourselves from over time, partially because it's like through just evidence in general, you realize that person's character is not the one that you thought it was.
Yeah. And just, or maybe they just don't conduct themselves in a way that like fits my values.
Yeah. And that is a wide spectrum of like different things. Mm-hmm. There's definitely instances where it's like, you know, you're like, I'm principled about this. Then other instances where you're like, it's just more of like, I just see things differently, you know? Mm-hmm. But the thing is like, it's very, the thing that I find to be the most dangerous, and where I get like, sort of like, this person is a predator, and not just a predator, but like someone that like we need to be proactive about, is whenever you have someone that the behaviors or the things that you uncover about them don't appear to align with any aspect of their character that they show anyone else.
Yeah. That's the scariest type of person to encounter when you find out things. It's like a lot of these people, like even like serial killers, like, I mean, I love watching a lot of true crime and stuff. I'm like, the most basic when it comes to that stuff is like, I think it's like white women love like true crime.
Oh yeah. It's like,
and I do.
It's like the NFL for you guys.
I do. But I think it's one of those things that's like, there's this like, always this narrative is like, oh, I would have never expected that from that person. Like, they were just so nice, and they were this, and they were that, and like, they were just like a staple in the community, or this and that. And it's like, those people are the scariest, because you are a true psychopath or sociopath when you can hide this super evil thing and that nobody else knows, like not even your wife or kids know that this is a life that you lead, like really, truly deep down. And these are the things you're doing. And I think that, I don't know why, but like, I mean, I know why. That's really scary that people can be that good at pretending.
And, you know, I was kind of like, I don't know how to like put it into words, but I know how to define it. And it's like, you know, you've got those like, there's always like a religious leader that it's like they're like anti-homosexual or like anti-something, and then it turns out like they're smoking meth and like banging like gay prostitutes or something like that. And one of the things that I think is like universally, whether you're like of that religion or whatever or not, like everybody universally like dislikes that person because they're inauthentic.
Because the hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Like, it's... Nobody likes a hypocrite anyway, and like we all have like our own like hypocritical like things, viewpoints, things that we do like on some level. I think that there's like, it's just human nature to be a little bit hypocritical, but like just like blatant hypocrisy is very different than like just like, oh, like I don't know vanilla ice cream, but then you see me eating an ice cream cone because I'm like, who's gonna pass up ice cream? They only had vanilla.
It's not the worst. Yeah,
I don't know, like that's like stupid, but like, you know, just something simple like that where it's like not that big of a deal. But then like the blatant hypocrisy of it, where it's like you preach and you point the finger at other people. Like, I feel like that's usually like the people who talk the loudest and like point blame at others the most are the ones that like are doing that to like, don't look at what I'm doing. Like, I'm going to try and like shine the light on this so that you don't see like my own like shortcomings.
Yeah. And I think the way that I think about it, like I said, you know, I can kind of describe it, but I can't define it. It's a sense of like, that person would put me in danger without any question or any like consideration, because it's like, imagine you had something that was blue in your hand and you were like, this is blue. And then you looked at someone and they go, no, it's not. It's red. And they looked at you dead serious and they were just like lying to your face. It's like, if somebody did that to you, you would immediately just be like, I don't trust, this person seems not right. Like, I don't want anything to do with this person because they will clearly like, with their own self-interest, like completely ignore reality. And to me, that's the type of person that you're describing, where it's like this sort of like, oh, I never would have thought they would have been a psychopath and like cut people up and put them in jars in their basement or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's all those shows.
Not jars in their basement.
Yeah.
They might cut them up and hide them in like some other kind of grave. But like, yeah.
But yeah.
They always keep some kind of trophy.
But it's like the reason why I think just biologically, like sort of like your spidey sense is tingling whenever that happens, is because there's an inherent danger in somebody that like would willingly misrepresent reality in order to serve their own self-interest. It's like human beings like naturally are a social creature, and it's like part of that is that we benefit from like working together, right? And so this person that like breaks away and is willing to like only benefit themselves, it's like, yeah, we need to keep our eyes on you, because whether your benefit like aligns with everybody else's or not, like it's inconsequential to you.
Yeah.
And I think that makes them a both dangerous person and the type of person you can never entrust to be a leader. And unfortunately, someone that is serving their own self-interest is like very apt to rise to power, right?
Yeah. That's so true.
I'm hitting you with some knowledge bombs, but
I
that's
know,
why.
But it's so frustrating because it's so true, and I think a lot of people that are in like positions of power. I mean, I don't want to get political or anything like that, but it's like everybody else is out for their own self-interest, their own, like, I would say that most people, not most, but a lot of people in positions of real power, like, they only, like, ultimately want to do what's best for them.
Yeah, and I think, that's something I was telling somebody this week that I work with, and they were... I'm not going to go into it, but like essentially like one of the things I was saying is like, there's a lot of things that I do purely for the self-interest of people that work for me or people that I work with, to where it's like, I want them to benefit irregardless of whether or not my company or myself benefit from it long-term, because I think ultimately it's like the right thing to do. And then if you do it long enough, it like it comes back to you. But like it is one of those things to where it's like you have to beware some, like, even the people that like proselytize that I'm doing this because I want to benefit other people or whatever. It's the same as like a Northrop Grumman or whatever, like the military contractor being like, yeah, we love LGBTQ plus or whatever, and then you're like, cool, like, because you make missiles, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like all you're doing is you're just like putting out a PR banner. It's no basis in reality. I don't think that a military defense contractor really cares all that much about like
any of the social
social stuff that's going on. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that's been interesting about this whole process, where we found out today like the age of consent of a minor.
Well, I just Googled it because I saw a story. We saw a story about the what's her name?
The UFC fighter.
Yeah, she was in the UFC. Pereira, I think was her last name.
Yeah, that's correct.
Something, but she got kicked off her team when she found out she was pregnant by her coach, and she started training under this coach when she was 12.
Yep.
And then started dating him and having sexual relations with him when she was 15
or 16.
Yeah, 15. It was 15. I was gonna say, I thought it was maybe younger. But 15, and then wound up getting pregnant, not because she wanted to. She comes to the coach, tells him she's pregnant, and then now he kicks her off the team. She's not fighting anymore. She and is like barely getting by on some like government program, like it's like giving her like not enough money to like even survive, let alone take care of her own child, and he wants nothing to do with the child. And it's just like, so I was like, what's the legal age of consent? Because it's been a lot of the excuses that have been put out there for these guys that are sleeping with girls that are under the age of consent, saying like, well, that's like normal in our culture to like sleep with younger girls and blah blah blah. And I don't care if that like this isn't Brazil, so like, well, a lot of these, like most of the cases we've been talking about are happening in the States. And so it's like, this doesn't matter. But I just like Googled it, and it said like, it's not like a legal thing. But it said the age of consent is like 14 is what I read, right?
Yeah.
And that like there are like some legal cases that have been withheld, like that is it like young as like 12 and 13-year-old girls have been like had relationships with guys that were like up to 5 years older than them, sexual relationships, and it's been withheld that it was like legal in that country. And so I think it's like super disappointing to find that out.
The thing is like this is where I think we have to like really look at I've said this to you a couple times this week, but I don't think I've said it on the podcast, where I was telling someone that I work with about this, because I was trying to describe to them the fact that, like, you don't have to be what you think of as like a corporation or like buttoned up or like whatever, because a lot of these things this is a world that somebody else built, and like they're just a person too, so they can be flawed, or like people. And so we don't have to live in the world that somebody else has built for us.
Yeah, just because it's always been that way and it's been accepted for a long time doesn't mean that we have to continue to accept these things. And
one of the great things about America, and I'm not trying to like stand on some kind of soapbox and be like America first, whatever. Like, I'm not that guy ever, but like I will say this:
USA, USA.
Like, one of the amazing things about the foundation of America is it was built on this idea that we're gonna like try to make democracy actually work, and there's so many flaws like throughout the history of America, and even you could argue that there's nothing close to a democracy occurring right now. But we do have a constitution that guarantees a Bill of Human Rights, and those things are, whether you want to say they're like inalienable to you because of like a higher power or God or whatever, it's like it states that people have these rights when they're born, like the right to free speech. You know what I mean? Like these things are things that you have a right to freedom, and that's something where it's like no other country in the world really provides this in the same way. And so when you look at it through an American lens, it's easy to be like, yeah, this is really messed up. They, you can look at Sharia law or like other countries, the age of consent or whatever. And you could be accused of saying, well, you're not taking into like the cultural context of it or whatever. But the thing is, what we're taking into context in these cases is the fact that humans have rights, and that like at a certain age, we all have to decide whether or not it's legal or not legal. Like, do we think that those people that are being taken advantage of or being preyed upon, whether or not they agree to it in quotes or not? It's the fact that like these are people. Do they have the agency to like defend their rights, exercise their rights, or are they quote unquote groomed, or are they like basically put in a position to where it's like you're funneled into only one choice?
Yeah, I mean, I think so many of the things that I'm seeing, it's like there's why we have like an age of consent in the states that's so high is because that's when you legally become an adult. Like, that's the only time that you can actually make decisions for yourself on your own accord. Like, if you can't take care of yourself, like, on your own accord, like, I mean, how many times have you said this? Is like, you tell me this all the time. Is like, from the ages of like, what, 15? What do you say? 15 to like 18?
Yep.
Like, guys are just completely stupid.
Yeah.
Like,
from the ages of 15 to 18, I always tell my friends that have kids, or like people that like we talk to that have kids, I'm like, between the age of 15 and 18, I'm sorry, but like, you're the dumbest you're ever going to be in your entire life.
Yes, because you're not making decisions based on like
you're not using your brain.
You're not using your brain. No, you're not being logical. And so I think that's the thing is like, we can joke around about it like just being a dumb kid, but it's like that's the thing is like I just look back at all the different things where I thought I knew this, and I thought I knew that, and I thought I was like in love, or I thought I felt this way, but it's like you really don't know what those things even are, because you don't have enough life experience, you don't have enough like world experience like to really understand that, or even to understand the repercussions of the actions that you're making at that time.
Yeah, and like I don't want to pretend to be like a nanny or like an advocate of like nanny statism, but like it's the equivalent of like, imagine you have like a 4-year-old and they're like, I want a dog, and you're like, I know you want a dog, like you want to interact with the dog, that the idea of that seems like great because it's great when a dog's around, but like the reality and the responsibility of that is not something that you're even capable of really understanding right now. It's a very like remedial and maybe like
yeah, but that's like, I think it's a good example. Like you're not even a 4-year-old, like a 10-year-old like wouldn't even know like what. I mean, that was something that my mom told me all the time because I wanted all the dogs, and I was actually like willing to take care of them. Probably didn't do my full job on that, but Like just like the little like simply like taking care of another like living thing is a huge responsibility, and you're not capable of understanding that. Like I just want a cute dog to cuddle with, and pet and play with.
And there's a difference between being physically capable and being like emotionally, mentally capable. Because one thing that rings true to me is like I won't forget, like one of the people that's kind of been like investigating, kind of like, you know, sharing a lot of this stuff. I can't remember who it was. They had posted like the text exchange with somebody that was like, I guess like a brother or a friend of the guy that was accused of sexually assaulting a minor from Fight Sports. And he was like, well, if they can drive a car, you know, like they can have sex, basically. I'm actually cleaning up the language a little bit, but like, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, the reason why people can't drive a car until they're 16 in the United States is because you're not responsible enough. You like, everybody sort of agrees, but you're also like a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old cannot physically drive a car, right?
Yeah.
And just because you're physically able to make a decision and physically able to like sleep with someone or have like a sexual relationship with them doesn't necessarily mean like you're responsible enough to do that. Yeah. And despite, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of 5-year-olds out there that think they can drive cars, but like, I'll take my.
We've all seen them with that little like Barbie Jeep. Yeah. How many times do they run into stuff?
How many times that battery die? Almost immediately, in my experience. I had a neighbor that had a Barbie Jeep, and this is me probably out myself as part of the patriarchy, but I just remember like, I'd always be like, hey, yeah, I know we never played together, but how's that Barbie Jeep? It charged up right now? Because if so, like, I want to drive that thing. And so I would like talk them into letting me get the Barbie Jeep out, and we'd drive it down the street till it was dead.
Yeah. I would always drive my neighbors too. My mom never got me one.
Low key, that's why I have been like a little bit on the fence about buying a Tesla, because I'm never forget those Barbie Jeeps. I'm like, yeah, but how far is it going to get down the street? Is it going to start getting like a lot slower, and then, you know, like going down the highway, it's like
you're pressing the gas and it's like, and then now my Tesla's dead.
Yep.
We on the highway.
Yeah, but I think that's the element of all this that makes it sort of, I guess, particularly like nuanced in some ways, but in others, I think if we start having these conversations about like what is culturally appropriate or what is legally appropriate and different things like that, I always like to throw those conversations back to like, cool, like how do you feel about that personally?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's like, for me, it's just kind of like, you can say, oh, culturally it's okay, or like there's like a, you know, whatever the age of consent is and all this kind of stuff. But there's just like a very, like, you can see this pattern of like being like predators, like with these guys, where they're always going after younger, like, girls or children that like aren't fully like developed. Like your brain's not even developed at that age. And so I think that there's like this thing, but I think as a human being, we can just look at it and be like, I don't understand that. That's gross. Like that's disturbing. You're going after somebody's child, not like an adult human. Yeah. And I think, you know, I told you this story, but when I was 16 years old, I was talking to a guy, like, kind of, like, interested in, like, we hung out in the same group. Like, I had, like, some older friends, but he was 20 years old. And, like, there was this, you know, thing. I'm like, I think I like him, but, like, I don't know. But then I just, like, for me, I came to the realization, too, and maybe this was just me giving excuses. Like, maybe I didn't actually, like, want to date this person. But I'm just, like, I don't understand. Like, we're just in different places of our life. So, like, it doesn't make sense to have a relationship with this person, because my world and what's important to me is very different than your world and what's important to you right now. Because it wasn't even like, this guy wasn't even in school. So it's like, we can't even say like, oh, like college and high school, like similar things like that. It wasn't even like that. It was like a 4-year difference. And I'm like, he's like working and being an adult, and he like lives on his own and he's taking care of himself. And I'm like still like living with my parents and like have like all these rules and boundaries. And I think for me, I was just like not creeped out, but like when I thought about it, but kind of, because I'm just like, I don't know, like, what do you want from me? Like, we just live very, like, different lives. So I think that creeps me out when I see, like, what do you want with a kid? Like, it's purely sexual, and there's something wrong about that when you're going after young children, when it's like, it's different to have a relationship with somebody and then it becomes sexual, because it's like we have common interests, we have, you know, same like goal, we share certain things, but it's very different when you're going up to somebody who's like, what do you even have in common? Like, what do you even, like, how do you, like, what's the relationship really look like?
Yeah.
You know, how do you have a real relationship with that person? You're in completely different worlds.
And that's where it comes, like, that's where I think we need to be able to distinguish here, where it's like the difference between having personal agency and having the capability of personal responsibility, and not, because I find the same thing whenever I see like some dude that's like 45 dating like a 21-year-old. It's like, you guys are in totally different places. You guys have nothing in common. This is purely like, it's transactional in most cases. The female, it's like dating an older man or something like that. And the man that's like, I just want to like, get with this like 21-year-old.
Have this young pretty thing on my like arm candy.
Yeah. But both are personally responsible and have their own agency. So like adults get to make decisions. Like you can exchange whatever you want for whatever you want. But whenever you have a child, like they don't have that same agency. And like you were saying, like you don't understand like that motivation or that interest or whatever. I liken it to like somebody that's like somebody that's fighting in a weight class of like 205 pounds, and they want to fight somebody that's like a rooster weight. And it's like, well, why do you want to do that? Well, it's obvious. It's easier. Like they have a huge advantage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's where I find like this particularly creepy about like dudes that are always like going after these women that are like 16, 17 years old, because it's like, you profess to be like in the same way like a big weight class comes down to a small one. It's like, we're both fighters, and it's like, we're both human beings that like have adult like anatomy or whatever, but like realistically, like I have this huge advantage to where it's going to make it a much easier pursuit for me than it is for you. And I think that's where, you know, like you have commissions and stuff like that come into play for safety.
Yeah. I think that's something like we've talked about a lot. It's like, and it's kind of a little bit switching lanes here, but like all things, like, you know, jiu-jitsu is supposed to be somebody to like, it's created like, and these martial arts are created like from like a self-defense standpoint of like a smaller opponent. The more technical person should be the one who is able to win. But let's not pretend like when all things are equal, we both have technique, we both trained. We both train in some aspect. If you're bigger and stronger, you have a significant advantage. Doesn't mean that like you're always going to win against a smaller person, but it's a huge advantage. And I think that, you know, like people who want to fight smaller people, like they know the advantage that they have, and like that they're like, you know, taking the easier way out.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing where it's like, you know, organizationally you look at something and you're like, if you have the chance to hire somebody with experience or somebody that like is very, very talented, and you know once they have that experience they're going to be a lot better, like you'll always choose to train the person that's got like the more capability, even though immediately they might not be able to do the job the same way. It's the same. It's like, you know, I think jiu-jitsu gets this like moniker for being this martial art where the smaller person can defeat the bigger one, but this is all things. This is boxing. It's like somebody that knows how to box versus somebody that's never boxed a day in their life. It's like, it doesn't matter if the person's like a lot bigger and stronger. Like the trained boxer is going to have a huge advantage because of what they know. In the same way that two people start a job where one person knows how to do something, somebody doesn't, but the person that's more talented, like once they do train, they'll be far better. And I think that's where, you know, even in martial arts or something like that, like you put two people that are completely different weight classes together, you know, the skill doesn't even have to be equal. You know, like that's always the thing. It's like, well, if skill's equal, the bigger person wins. It's like, it doesn't even need to be equal. It
just needs to have some skill.
Yeah. The physical advantage is so great. The talent is so great. And one of the more recent ones we've seen is Kayla Harrison recently made it to the PFL finals. Kayla Harrison, the former two-time Olympic gold medalist in judo, undefeated MMA, very, very talented up and coming prospect.
Yeah.
Fighting at 145, which I think is a stretch probably for her.
I think 155 is the weight class
she's more comfortable
in, but she can make it down to 145
but,
because there's more women there.
Gabby Garcia recently was if
first Cyborg called her out, and then but more recently Gabby Garcia called her out.
She was saying I would cut the weight to make that happen. And first of all, I don't imagine that Gabby Garcia
it's
can make
possible for her to get that. I don't even know that it's physically possible for her to get that small.
Yeah, I don't think so
she's
either.
Just
But even if by a miracle of God it could happen, she's far larger.
Yeah.
Far larger.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna get into the dynamics and try to analyze that fight and say who I think would win no matter what. But the truth is I can't remember if we talked about this in the show or not, but they did some kind of study or just analysis of fighters that didn't make weight, and they compared their records at the end of the year, and I think it was 2019. It was 20-something and 2 or 20-something and 3. The people that didn't make weight won their fights.
Yeah. I mean that it's a huge advantage to be bigger. In those scenarios, especially when it's whereas we all agreed to make this weight and then you can't make that weight, you didn't cut as much as I did or you didn't work as hard as I did. So there's a lot more sacrifice that goes into it where you're breaking down your body a lot more than the other person. So it's more advantageous to be bigger.
Yeah. And I think, regardless of if you feel this is all about fairness or equality of opportunity versus outcome or something like that. It's not even about equality of opportunity whenever one party is challenging another.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it always looks bad for somebody who is significantly bigger to call out somebody smaller than them. If a smaller person wants to call out larger people, that's on them. You got cojones to try and step up to a bigger person. You got nothing to lose. But what's there to benefit or to gain if you're somebody who is a lot bigger calling out a smaller opponent?
Yeah, there's no virtue in it because we all see the sort of the maneuvering to gain an advantage in that case.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's really obvious, what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that makes us all uncomfortable about this predatory situation, and also uncomfortable whenever you see different people
we're not saying that those things are
no
the same.
God no God no
those are very different things. We're just riffing.
But, just trying to get to
things.
The bottom of the fact that it's these things there's an inherentness to the nature of which we all react to them, and it's negative. And I think a lot of the defenses that you see people put up in regards to whether or not it's legal or right or culturally appropriate or something like that, all these things come back to
people excusing things, saying it was consensual. It's it's not consensual when it's a child.
But it comes back to the fact that we all inherently have this even if you want to, whether it's from God or from biology or however you want to define it, as humans we know that the maneuvering for an advantage, we all feel kind of queasy about that, and it's because we see as together that's the best that we are. We're an adaptable species, but ultimately socially we're supposed to be connected and work together. That's where our advantage lies. And when we have somebody that's operating outside of that, it makes us all really uncomfortable. And I think we need to lean into that. I think maybe that's something that's happening right now, and people don't know how to feel about it. But we should all be uncomfortable about it.
Yeah, and I think it's important for the people that are in positions of power, positions where they can say something, maybe stand up for people who aren't willing to stand up for themselves, or aren't capable of standing up for themselves.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing is, like, I always talk about how, like, I have more compassion for animals than people in a lot of cases. Like, and that's just me being, you know, like, obviously, like, a dog lover. It's huge. Like, I just love animals. And in a lot of cases, I think this is the same thing with animals and children. It's like, the reason why, like, you feel this, like, need to nurture to protect them is because it's people who can't speak up for themselves and can't protect themselves. Like, that's your job, is to protect them and to take care of them. Like, that's, like, as humans, like, I feel like that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
You know,
there's a virtue in it, and because there's a net benefit, because we're all children at some point. Many of us have children, not us, thank God. Undefeated. But that's the thing is like, we all understand that, like, it's a benefit to humankind if we weed out people that, like, essentially operate differently, where it's like we're not looking out for the people that can't look out for themselves.
It's not just differently. You can operate differently, and that can be a good thing, but it's when you operate in a very negative, selfish way.
Yeah, counterproductive to what everybody else is doing. Yeah.
To the benefit of society.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
But I do find that, like, something that, like you said, people that are in positions of power, like, you know, you mentioned, like, sticking up for people that, you know, can't stick up for themselves. It's more about, like, not putting people that shouldn't need to stick up for themselves in position to where they should. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things. It's like, we're all learning. Like, I told the story earlier, it's like, I've got a billion other instances where it's like, I'm learning it's the same as everybody else is. The biggest thing you can do is, like, when something happens on your watch or you make a mistake or whatever, it's like, own up to it and then just, like, learn from it. That doesn't mean be perfect. It means learn from it.
Try and do a better job the next time.
I have 0 official statements in my life. And the reason is because, like...
Well, we'll see what happens
because
with that.
I am... Yeah. Like, let's hope I don't have to have any. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't want to be in a position where I have to write something down or write something that I say down that reflects, like, my position on something necessarily to the degree to where I can't just continue to learn and get better on my own anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like if you have to make those official statements, it's like you're not being transparent enough in your, like, regular life, like, or your like daily, like, ongoings. Like, if I have to make official statement, like, I feel like I would never have to make an official statement of, like, my official statement is that I am against child
Space Jam 2.
No. Yes.
I've changed my opinion about it slightly. A lot of people really like Space Jam 2, and I appreciate
I'm over it.
But that's my point. It's like,
but I don't have to make official statements about things because, like, I feel like the way that I live my life, you would know what my stance is on that.
Yeah, you guys know how we feel.
But I would also speak out when I see an injustice. And that's part of me living my life. Like, if I see you would know that about me. Like, if you know me.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like
one of my friends today, like, I was texting with, we went to the Andrew Schultz comedy special last night in LA, and it was awesome. It was so much fun.
Bruce Buffer in the house.
Yeah, Bruce Buffer announced Schultz coming out, which is so dope. But it was just really fun. But I was like, my friend, he had, like, actually sold us his tickets, and then he had 2 other tickets that were sitting. He's always like, "Oh, this person was sitting next to you," and I was like, without, like, even waiting for his response, because I was like, "Oh yeah," and I'm like, he sent me. He's like, I was like, "Did you know that person?" I was like, because their laugh was really annoying. And I was like, I didn't even wait to, like, talk trash on this person to know if, like, oh, this is your friend. Because I'm like, I just can't help myself. I'm just going to be honest. I'm going to say what I think. Not all the time. I try and, like, you know, like, use a little better judgment sometimes and not just always speaking what's on my mind because it's not the greatest. But I'm not going to hide my feelings or hide, you know, anything.
But if you listen to the show, you should definitely hide your laugh around Jenna Bishop because she will.
If it's annoying, I will
tell her friends.
Tell my friends.
So deal with it.
I mean, that's on you though. If you have an annoying laugh, like, change it.
Deal with it, meme.
I'm not mad at the person for having an annoying laugh. It was just kind of annoying.
Yeah. Well,
but she was enjoying herself.
Yeah.
Same as I was.
Live your life.
People might think my laugh is annoying at times. I don't care.
If you're laughing at them about their laughs.
Yep.
Well, that's it. Yeah, that pretty much wraps up the podcast and probably wraps us up on this subject unless something else happens that we feel like we want to talk about. But yeah, like just I think it's hard not to talk about this subject right now. And it's not that I feel.
And I think that the reason that we wanted to talk, we wound up talking. We weren't even planning on like this being like the most of the topic, but like it's something that has been brushed under the rug so many times that it gets like put into the like. It gets put out there and it gets talked about it and then it gets forgotten. And so it's one of those things that's like, I don't want to forget that these things are happening and then these people are out there and they're predators and they're doing bad things. So like we want to make sure that like that doesn't get forgotten and that these victims like don't have to just like deal and keep on living knowing that they're, their predator, like they're the person who assaulted them is just like out there living life normal and like profiting still like off of their pain.
That's where I really like the time's up aspect as opposed to Me Too. Is I think that is the goal in a lot of these cases where it's like you want to show that like these instances
enough
like
is enough.
Yeah, time is up. Like these things aren't going to continue to occur. And
we're not going to accept it anymore.
Yeah, because I do feel like jiu-jitsu specifically has had a lot of these moments over the last maybe 5 or 6 years where one particular instance happens and everybody's like up in arms, then it kind of like then things just basically go back to normal, and I do hope that changes.
Yeah, me too.
Well, we want to thank everybody for listening to another episode of the podcast. Not-fighting.com. If you want to subscribe and continue to watch or listen to the podcast, leave a review if you can. And Jenna, anything else?
No.
All right, we'll catch you next time on another episode of
Not Fighting.